In this episode of Quakers Today, we ask, what does home mean to you?
Zae Illo is a graduate of Earlham School of Religion and a public theologian. He's created a unique ministry for the unhoused people who gather outside the San Francisco Friends meeting. He shares his own experience of living without shelter and the challenges his meeting faces as they seek to truly welcome unhoused neighbors.
Shirley Domenici brings us stories of how Friends meetings across the U.S. are sharing their time and resources to meet the growing needs of people without housing.
And Michael Lewick-Trans takes us back to World War II, when Scattergood Friends School became a refuge for Jewish families fleeing genocide. I'm Miche.
I'm Peterson Toscano. This is Season 4, Episode 6 of Quakers Today, a podcast from Friends Publishing Corporation. This season is made possible thanks to the support of Friends Fiduciary and the American Friends Service Committee. Thank you for joining us today. Our episode gets its inspiration from the May 2025 issue of Friends Journal.
Yeah, this issue lifts up stories of friends who aren't content to just look away from the crisis of homelessness, but who instead follow Spirit's lead to care for their neighbors.
As Gabe writes in the opening editorial, in a world as profoundly abundant as ours, it is a societal failure of monumental proportions that anyone go without safe and comfortable housing.
And he ends with this reminder from Scripture and Woolman. Think on these things and do them. That's what we're exploring today, what it means to actually do something. When we talk about urban ministry, some people think of soup kitchens, shelters, or donations. But for Zae Illo, ministry is something different. It's about listening, showing up, and letting Spirit lead him to places that are uncomfortable and deeply needed.
Drawing from his own lived experience of homelessness, Zae brings a powerful witness to San Francisco's streets and to friends. Today, he shares what he's learned from offering spiritual care in a most unlikely form: laundry.
More than a decade ago, when I moved to San Francisco from Chicago, I lived at one of the largest shelters in the city. This first required spending many nights sleeping while sitting upright in a chair. Not everyone in shelter necessarily receives a bed. Every day we had to queue in order to check in, praying that not too many people in front of us signed up for laundry, since there were only so many total washes available per day. I keenly recall feeling exposed while in my bunk bed, sleeping next to people who were sometimes in the midst of mental episodes. Yet for all of the challenges, I recall staff who were clearly gifted in managing conflict and creating rapport with shelter guests. Their ability to exert influence and speak with the culture, not at the culture, was fascinating to me. I also recall the conversations with George, an elderly African-American, with whom I'd often eat dinner at the common dining room. He is an ancestor, an angel whispering a word for me to carry on in this sometimes spiritually perilous work.
Those early experiences shaped Zae's understanding of dignity and community. Later, while finishing seminary at Earlham School of Religion, he lived and worked at a tiny house shelter in Oakland. A Quaker founded this transitional housing community. It was a different model of care: private space, personal keys, the freedom to do simple things like wash laundry whenever needed. Through that, Zae's idea of housing and ministry was transformed.
On January 28th, 2024, I began sitting outside the meetinghouse on Sundays during meeting for worship to extend spiritual care in the form of laundry. The laundry is just the outer shell, the spiritual tortilla, per se, that hides what's really the center of the experience: active listening and spiritual care to persons usually excluded, absent from worship.
What Zae offers isn't flashy. a simple folding table, a handwritten sign, an invitation to relationship. But his presence reveals something many urban dwellers and worship communities prefer not to see.
It means that you might have someone in the fellowship hall who's literally falling asleep in a plate of food. It means that you might have someone that is so exhausted and so tired, they're not able to sit up in meaningful worship. And it makes people uncomfortable because they don't know what to do, because if we're being really honest, it collides into the discipline of an urban context where we are trained to some degree to ignore people and pretend we don't see them. It invites discomfort because you're called to respond in a different way than you might if you were just walking down the street.
Welcoming spirit doesn't always look orderly. It sometimes looks like exhaustion, hunger, grief. And it challenges our expectations, especially when race and power dynamics are involved.
It is unfortunately a reminder that no matter how long I sit in the chair on Sundays, no matter how much I serve in committees, no matter how much I show up, at the end of the day, I still am an African American in the tradition. And if the assumption of other people is that all of that time that I've spent there will somehow totally assimilate me into their culture, they are surprised to learn that that is not true. That the concerns that I will hold will be of populations that they might not register in their world the same way, because as someone within the African American population that is disproportionately sleeping outside of our meeting house, it makes perfect sense why spirit might nudge me in a certain direction and not others.
For Zae, spirit's call doesn't erase his identity. It deepens it.
Spirit's not magic. It does not entail a personality displacement. But spirit is not a Star Wars laser that's going to magically teleport you to be something that you never were to begin with. It helps you to live the life that you already live at greater depth, at greater understanding of yourself. So then when you hit that spiritual realization that, oh, I've been doing this thing, ignoring these people, etc., that's very uncomfortable. And so for some people, it would be much easier if those people weren't there to remind them and to serve as that point of collision.
Zae sees in the Quaker tradition a way forward, a chance to meet people not with judgment, but with listening and love.
And so I'm very hopeful about the potential of our tradition to meet those people. I fall perhaps much more on the line of Paul in the Quaker sense than James. The mission call is to go and find those people versus to stay secluded inside of the meeting house, hoping again that other forces beyond myself will fix these issues.
Zae reminds us, Spirit's work often begins where our comfort ends. When we show up with open hearts, we find a different kind of worship. One built not on silence alone, but on presence, on dignity, on love in action.
What does faithfulness look like on the streets where you live? Where is Spirit calling you to see more clearly and to love more deeply?
Zae has a lot more to share about his experiences with unhoused people in San Francisco. You can read his article, Laundry Chaplaincy for Unsheltered Souls, in the May 2025 issue of Friends Journal. It is also available for free at friendsjournal.org. Learn more about Zae Illo at his website, zaeillo.com. Zae is spelled Z-A-E, and Illo is I-L-L-O, zaeillo.com. We began with Zae's story of urban ministry in San Francisco, personal, spirit-led, and grounded in relationship.
And now we hear from journalist Charlie Domenici, who reports on how Quaker meetings across North America are responding to homelessness in their communities.
The Tempe meeting in Tempe, Arizona, offers a dinner for people facing homelessness. They also have partnered with other congregations to offer a stayover shelter in a house of worship downtown. One of the members lives at a local retirement community. She had arranged for the bedding from the overnight shelter to be washed at the retirement community and then taken back before they had laundry facilities at the shelter. Folks really came together around serving people facing homelessness in that meeting. Some people prepared dinner, some people served dinner. People would also go to the overnight shelter and talk with folks and see what other needs could be met. One that really touched my heart was the effort by Bruce Folsom of San Francisco Meeting, who took a big emotional risk by just standing outside the meetinghouse 2 days a week, developing relationships with people facing homelessness. He developed a really close friendship with an unhoused person named Yolanda. Yolanda introduced him to many people in the homeless community who he otherwise probably would not have met because they would not have trusted him enough without Yolanda's connection. Unfortunately, Yolanda passed away after many years of friendship with Folsom, and Folsom was really grieved by her death. He met her mother and sister and asked the San Francisco meeting to have a memorial for her. Although she was not a member or an attender, they did have a memorial. Folsom spoke to me of allowing one's heart to be broken repeatedly by the difficulties that some folks face when they're unhoused. He also spoke of the need for spiritually grounding practices, which for him are prayer and plain song.
That's just one of many stories Charlie Domenici shares in the May 2025 issue of Friends Journal.
To read her full article, Solidarity with Our Unhoused Neighbors, and to explore more about how Friends are taking action, visit friendsjournal.org.
What were we doing at a time of danger and peril and the rising clouds of war? This is America's largest grassroots response to the Holocaust. I'm Michael Trans. I live in Turingen in the middle of Germany, where I'm a professor of social history at the Universität Erfurt. The way that Scattergood House was created itself is sort of a miracle. Young Iowa Quakers met in Clear Lake, Iowa in 1938 and said, the situation in Nazi Germany is insufferable. The Jews are being abused, they're being threatened. They probably imagine some are being killed. And so the Iowa Young Quakers wrote to the AFSC and said, we could imagine bringing some of these refugees to Iowa in the summer and doing projects. We could use the closed school at Scattergood. The letter arrived at Clarence Pickett's desk here in Philadelphia at the AFSC just as he was going on the Speckline delegation in Germany. Clarence Pickett returns, hands his report in to the AFSC proper, and the report is filed, stamped, and dated November 8th. On November 9th, the next day, was Kristallnacht. Clarence Pickett has just gotten this letter from his Iowa Quakers, and he's just returned himself, and he's seeing these Jews who are desperate to get out of the Nazi morass. So he grabs the young Iowa Quakers' offer and says, great, but we're not just going to send people to you in the summer, we'll send to you year-round. the Iowa Quakers take over this abandoned school and make it a hostel. And when you think of these Iowa Quaker kids, they came up with the idea, well, let's bring these refugees to Iowa. It's the most improbable, ridiculous idea there is. But when Germany took over the Sudetenland, and then only a couple months later they were bringing the synagogues, you had to do something. Those who care and are able could literally live with those who need to find a new life. And that's what Scattergood really helped them do. These people were untrained, and yet they gave them what they had. There was 30 refugees at any given time to a ratio of 15 American staff, and certainly that could be a model for today.
That was Michael Lewig-Trams, a member of Des Moines Valley Friends Meeting, in an excerpt from the Quaker Speak video entitled Scattergood Hostel, a Quaker response to the Holocaust. You can hear more Quaker Speak videos filmed and edited by Layla Cuthrell on YouTube or at quakerspeak.com.
If you or a young person in your life wants to learn more about this time in Scattergood's history, pick up the book Scattergood by H.M. Bauman. This historical novel centers around Peggy, a 12-year-old farm girl, Gunter, a young refugee, and Camilla, a young Quaker volunteer. It's a story of friendship, resilience, and finding light even in the shadows of a world on the brink of war. Just like us, non-human creatures need a place to call home, which brings us to a delightful little book that has landed on the Friends Journal review desk. Bird, Bee, and Bug Houses, Homes and Habitats for Garden Wildlife by Susie Bahar and illustrated by Esther Combs.
The book is packed with vibrant illustrations of our smallest neighbors and the gardens they thrive in. Bahar stresses how the local habitat right outside our doors is often our first and most direct interaction with the natural world.
It's brimming with easy-to-follow instructions for building all sorts of wildlife homes. Birdhouses of different shapes and sizes, cozy owl and bat boxes, even bug hotels. There are also recipes for bird cake, yum, and even ideas for creating mini ponds for our amphibian friends.
It sounds like a fantastic resource, Peterson.
Bird, Bee, and Bug Houses, Homes and Habitats for Garden Wildlife is by Susie Bahar and illustrated by Esther Combs. It's recommended for ages 6 through 12, but I think I'm going to totally dip into it.
To read the full review of this book by Sheila Baumgartner and the review of Scattergood by Eileen Redden, visit Friends Journal online at friendsjournal.org.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Quakers Today. If you like what you heard today and you listen on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review our show. Many thanks to everyone sharing Quakers Today with friends and on social media. Quakers Today is written and produced by me, Peterson Toscano.
And me, Sweet Miche. Music on today's show comes from Epidemic Sound.
Season 4 of Quakers Today is sponsored by American Friends Service Committee. Vulnerable communities and the planet are counting on Quakers to take action for a more just, sustainable, and peaceful world. The American Friends Service Committee, or AFSC, works at the forefront of many social change movements to meet urgent humanitarian needs, challenge injustice, and build peace. Find out more about how you can get involved in their programs to protect migrant communities, establish an enduring peace in Palestine, demilitarize police forces around the world, assert the right to food for all, and more at afsc.org. That's afsc.org.
This season is also brought to you by Friends Fiduciary. Since 1898, Friends Fiduciary has provided values-aligned investment services for fellow Quaker organizations. Friends Fiduciary consistently achieves strong financial returns while witnessing the Quaker testimonies. They also help individuals support organizations they hold dear through giving strategies, including donor-advised funds, charitable gift annuities, and stock gifts. Learn more about FFC's services at friendsfiduciary.org.
Visit quakerstoday.org to see our show notes and a full transcript of this episode. And if you stick around after the closing, you will hear listeners' responses to the question, beyond a roof and four walls, what does the word home mean to you? Thank you, friend, for listening.
In a second, you'll hear listeners' ideas of home. But first, we need to tell you what our question will be for our next season.
Yeah, we begin season 5 in September. But in the meantime, we will bring you special interim episodes. Some of these will share audio from previous episodes. We'll also air content from other podcasts and create original content.
Here's the question for September. What is your favorite Quaker term that is common among friends but strange to outsiders?
Oh my goodness. There are so many we take for granted. I'm not going to give any away, but I'm curious to hear what people have to say. There's a couple ways you could answer this question. You can leave a voice memo, which is basically a voicemail, with your name and the town where you live. And here's the number to call, 317-Quakers. That's 317-782-5377. 317-Quakers. +1 if you're calling from outside the USA. You can also send us an email, podcast@friendsjournal.org. We have these contact details in our show notes over at quakerstoday.org. Oh, and you could also leave a comment on our many social media platforms. Now we hear answers to the question, beyond a roof and 4 walls, what does the word home mean to you?
Hi, my name is Rochelle, and I'm calling from Alabama. The very first time I attended a Quaker meeting, I didn't understand why tears kept going down my cheeks. It kept happening. I think for months, certainly for weeks, until I finally realized it was the first time in my life, the first place where I didn't have to wear any masks. I could be me. I could feel the presence of spirit and that which is sacred in each of us. The tears were not allergies. They were gratitude. Certainly, Quaker meeting means a lot more to me. Now that I'm in Alabama, there's exactly 2 meetings in the entire state that are open, friendly, and affiliated. The only way I can join them or anyone else, since they're hours away, is by Zoom. I very much have that gratitude continuing, and I'm grateful for Zoom. Thank you.
Hi, this is Linda from Orcas Island in Washington State. The first thing that came to my mind on this query is walking in the forest of my local state park, especially the part of the forest that all modern sound falls away, and it's just the sound of the trees blowing in the wind, the water gurgling over the rocks, just being deeply immersed in nature. One other instance comes to my mind of home is when a group of people are gathered in a deep silence. Thank you.
Hi, this is Cass. I use they, them pronouns. I'm calling from Providence, Rhode Island, United States. While home is actually kind of a difficult thing for me, I moved a lot as a kid, and as an adult, I kept moving a lot. I really haven't stayed somewhere for more than a few years. Right now is the longest I've been in a place since I was very young, which is even just 3 years, 2.5 years. Nonetheless, Quaker meeting and silent worship and that experience together has felt like a home for me over time. How can I find a home in this, spiritual community practice if I'm not sticking with it? Like there's this deeper connection in community that like I just can't pull off, or I don't have access to. But I realize I actually feel different now. I do feel that way. Several months ago in the fall, I was going through this complex grief. Somebody died who I loved, but also harmed me. And the feelings were very large. I didn't really know what to do with them. I went to Quaker meeting with my mom, and we were there, and I don't really know why, but in this space, I just started crying. I couldn't stop. I was crying in this space. I thought to maybe be embarrassed, or thought to maybe be like, who am I to show up? And definitely strong feelings, but I was just so incredibly touched with how people just got some Kleenex next to me. People responded to things that I said. People let me have these emotions, and it wasn't like a giant alarm deal. I was just in this space. And it really felt like facing in the same direction as people, like sitting on a dock together, looking at the water. I realized that even though my way might look different, I have kept coming back and back and back and trying to claim this feeling of home I feel in Quaker meeting. And in this moment, I got claimed back. There was just this feeling of, yes, come here. Yes, sit next to me. Home is something that you can reach towards again and again, and it's something that can claim you back. That's a beautiful thing, to have that relationship, even if it's hard sometimes to stay put. Yeah, I think that's all.
Well, my name is Christina. I live in Searsport, Maine. I was contented where I spent my childhood in central Pennsylvania. I learned about global warming in the early 1960s in late elementary school and decided, if in 50 years the climate's going to get this much warmer, then it'll be a reasonable one that's comparable to central Pennsylvania today in the early 60s. In 50 years, it'll be Maine. About 50 years later, I found myself moving to Maine for a variety of other reasons unrelated to that. I grew up with dual nationality, and my mother told me I would know which was my right country when I was there for a while and had been there and then left there for a while. For me, that home is my father's country where I did not grow up, but I met him at 22 and he looked right and he sounded right and he felt right and he smelled right. And that was my daddy. And never saw him again, but I still feel as though his country is mine, is my home. There's the emotional home. My son's ashes are here in Maine in my backyard, and my granddaughter lives just 40-minute drive away. So that's emotional. Then there's the spiritual home. If I was brought up outside of organized religion, but my rebellion against my mother was to think about religion a lot, and decided when I was maybe 11 that if I were a Christian, I'd be a Christian Scientist. But if I couldn't be a Christian, then I'd rather be a Quaker.
We put our question out to our listeners on Instagram, and the responses received were so thoughtful and, well, homey. Our first response was from Mario. Having moved around so much as a child and as an adult, it really just means a place where I'll be missed if I suddenly stopped showing up.
Home is not just about the space, but the connections we forge within it. Our next response from Sonia really resonated with me. Sonia writes, I remember visiting my elementary school in 6th grade and being wowed by how much I still felt enveloped and surrounded by all the love there, even when it was no longer my daily place.
And this sweet answer from Erin. She wrote, my husband. Neither Brooklyn nor upstate woods feels like home without him. I know it's cheesy, but it's true.
Our last answer is from Ben. My family is so diasporic that anytime there's a Wear Your Flag Day at the school I teach at, I don't participate. But being in North Brooklyn since 2010 makes it feel like home. Biking the streets without a map is so grounding. Yeah, that feeling of finally finding roots, of navigating a place with such familiarity, that's a beautiful aspect of home too, Miche. Thank you, Mario, Sonia, Erin, and Ben for those answers.
Keep an eye out on Our Home, the podcast feed. Before next season, we'll be releasing a few interim episodes. Thank you for listening, friend. See you soon.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun. Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright. Oh, you and I, we got it. Oh, we don't need no more. Oh, even in the hard times, you and I can weather any storm. Before I sleep, hear the crickets, see the moon, side by side and through. No limit to what we can do. Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.